Once upon a time there was a fisherman living in a dirty little pigsty where some dirty little fishes swim.
True enough, the man wasn't rich. Some would call his house a filthy hovel, others maybe just a ditch.
The Germans in their lowest language cared for it not. They called the residence a pisspot, which means piss pot.
It was a muddy tract of land, yielding only rocks and sand, and the house was rough and tiny from the fisherman's own hands.
The traffic of the townsfolk would occasionally come by and feel a little pang of pity for the couple in the pigsty.
The ocean was his life and his time was his own, so he really didn't mind having a dirty little home.
Only problem was he had a wife. She wasn't really all that pleased with her life. Would you be if you lived among the swine and daily mediated strife?
All the niceties that other women had, she lacked.
Her shoes were made of newspaper, muddy clothes on her back.
Slippery floors where her husband trilled the sea spray back.
She had weeds but no geraniums, sand in every corner, salt on all her finery, like nobody had warned her that the fishmonger's wife is not exactly what you'd call a life filled with buttered pastries and invitations to the ball.
The heart of woman is a mausoleum. When ambition lives in poverty, it sees events as chances it can seize on.
And so she bore it all with some semblance of her dignity. After all, her nourishment came from the sea. The hovel had a roof, and when the weather was inclement, they could huddle by the ashes and the embers and repent. The fisherman could sell what little misery he gathered, and he turned it into bread and all the little things that matter.
So the fisherman walked down to the sea. The sky was colored brilliantly, and birds were improvising in the trees.
The merest puff of wind applied a zephyr. It was clear that old Boreas and his brothers were non grata in this weather.
The ocean spread as pure and calm as glass in the harbor, where the ripples in perfected shimmer found the glass reflected. The denser medium produced refraction of the light. The spectrum was exploding and expanding what was bright.
It was one of those days that remind you you're a living organism. All those blessed involuntaries working in precision turned religion to loquacious aggrandizement. The glass that magnifies the man needs nary spokesman advertisement.
So he sat by the ocean with his little fishing pole, and he sat, and he sat, and he sat, and his wish was to catch just what he needed for himself and his wife, and he fished, and he fished, and he fished, and he fished.
He was just dozing off when his line went taut. He could feel that it sank deeper than the usual spot. He could feel that something heavier than usual was caught, and he pulled with every muscle more than usual, he thought. And on the other end, on the hook, was the biggest flounder ever seen or ever cooked. And the flounder sang,
Listen to me, oh noble fisherman. I'm pleading with you, oh help me swim again. 'Cause I'm not a flounder, I'm really an enchanted prince. An enchanted prince. Why would you kill me? What would be the good? If you think about it, I wouldn't even really taste that good. 'Cause I'm not a flounder, I'm really an enchanted prince. An enchanted prince.
You can save your breath.
the man replied.
Why in the world would I want to dine on a fish that talks? Go swim, be free. This'll be the last you hear of me.
So he returned the flounder to the peaceful sea, and it sank out of sight into the murky deep. And the wound wasn't deep, but it left the color of sanguine blood mixed with the salt water.
Back to his hovel he went.
Home sweet home.
His wife's scaling fish in the hut alone.
What did you catch?
And he told her the whole thing, how the fish was enchanted and he had to let her live.
And what was your wish?
My wish, what do you mean? What in the world could you and I need?
That isn't too hard to figure out. Look around. We live in all this poverty with rats and pigs about. Go back to the Flounder Prince and claim your wish to be free of the stench and our dependence on fish. We want a little cottage, and he owes us his life.
When the fisherman protested, he was slapped by his wife.
How can I go back there again?
He muttered to himself as he left the house, and now the wind was just a little stronger than before. He didn't feel this chill in his bones last time he went outdoors.
So the fisherman went down to the sea. The sky was overcast, and the birds sang a little less
The
brilliantly.
ocean now was choppy, and instead of azure blue, it was a jaundiced dark green, a more threatening hue. He stood there and called out, fish prince, living in the sea, rise up from the depths and swim to me. My wife has a wish and was a prince, and he couldn't say no. After all, the fisherman had let him go, so he swam to the surface, poked his flounder head out, and said,
"Well, what does she want? What's it all about?"
My stammered, oh noble fisherman. He was embarrassed and not really sure of where he should begin.
My wife, you see, has a pressing need. She doesn't want to live among the sand and the weeds. She doesn't want to spin until her fingers bleed. She wants a better life, and she doesn't call it greed. She says that if you're magic, you will grant her request. She hates her hovel now. She feels a cottage would be best.
Go home.
Said the flounder
Your
prince.
case is won. You now live in a cottage, and it's already done. So the fisherman went home, which no longer had a stench. His wife was by the door on a beautiful bench. She took him by the hand and said, "Come and look around. This will look much nicer to the people of the town."
And it's true, the house was a gem. A pretty little picture of a place that was perfect for the femme. The narrow little hallway had some lilacs on the table. The floors were made of oak and the foundation seemed stable.
It opened on a parlor built for visiting guests. They could receive their friends and family, give them chairs where they could rest.
To the left was a little tiny breakfast nook, and you should have seen the kitchen where the breakfast would be cooked. A wealth of pots and pans made out of hammered brass and tin, utensils and a window where the sun could come in.
The pantry was stocked full of vegetables and bread. It was enough to keep a family of 4 overfed, and it wasn't just a one-time gift. Behind the house, a garden overgrew with fruits of the wish. Apples, plums, pears, pomegranates, lemons, grapes, carrots and potatoes, tubers grew in every shape. And wandering the path and buried in the undergrowth, ducks and chickens could be seen, scratching dirt, quacking oaths.
The back room of the house had 2 little beds where the man and his wife could rest their little heads.
Why 2, you ask? Well, I guess the fish could see every detail of the man's wife's wish.
That night the couple ate well. They sipped their apple cider in the parlor and listened to the bell-like knell of the waves on the ocean beach. It was windy outside, yet they felt a sense of peace.
The funny thing about that fleeting feeling of peace is the notion that at any moment all could be released. It always has the character of something temporary, like the calm in the eye before all fury is unleashed. After all, it's only when everything's amazing that the people who were happy start complaining.
The couple woke up early feeling light and refreshed. The woman started talking while the man got dressed.
Listen to me, husband. This house is too small. The beds are too narrow, and the front door hall is too constricting. The garden's nice, but really not enough. The food has no variety. It's peasant stuff. The flounder could have given us something much bigger. A huge stone castle is what I'm picturing. Go back to the flounder prince. Revise your wish. We shouldn't be cheated by this magic fish.
Dear wife,
The fisherman gasped and was aghast.
how fast you got tired of being middle class. The flounder gave us peace and release. Our lives are mended. I wouldn't ask for more. The fish would be offended.
Nonsense, nonsense. Get down to the sea. The fishy won't mind. I guarantee. He can do it all and he'll do it for free.
The fisherman's heart sank in his chest. He didn't want to do it. He knew it would be best to turn back. It was whack, and he thought, this isn't right, and yet he left the house into the morning light. So the fisherman walked down to the sea. It was a chilly, windy morning with the chilly, windy breeze. The sun wouldn't shine, and he felt his blood freeze, because the birds were squawking angrily high up in the trees.
The ocean was no longer green and yellow like before. It was murkier and darker, and the chop seemed worse.
The feeble light the sun produced from far behind the clouds cast a sickly yellow pallor on the wave-crested troughs.
He gazed into the purple water, saw his own reflection as he called out the words that brought the prince in his direction. Fish prince, living in the sea, rise up from the depths and swim to me. My wife had a wish, she has another one still. She sent me here against my will. Fish popped up.
Well, your wife isn't happy with where you dwell? What does she wish for your happy home?
He stammered out his answer.
A castle made of stone?
Your wish is granted.
Said the fish.
Take care. You now live in a castle, and your wife is already there.
Where the cottage once stood, now a huge castle stands. His wife is beaming at him. She came and took his hands. They walked up the steps, and she said,
Come and look around. Now we have the biggest house of anyone in town.
And it's too many servants now, dressed in velvet finery. Their job at the castle was to keep their masters pleased. It took 2 or 3 to push aside the heavy wooden door, and Fisherman fisherman was shocked to see a sparkling marble
The
floor.
great front hall glittered bright and bold. The clean white walls hung with tapestries of old. The rooms were chairs and tables made of freshly hammered gold. The fireplaces roared and it would never feel cold.
Every room was furnished with a crystal chandelier. It cut the light even at night like a star was near.
Instead of just one room with 2 cozy beds, there were tens of bedrooms carpeted in red.
And then even though the dinner table stood of solid gold, buckling under weight of things to eat and drink untold.
The rustic peasant fare was converted into delicacies, filling golden platters being set and set ceaselessly.
Roasted pheasants, breaded sparrows, turkey stuffed with chickens, snapper bass and white to cart prepared with the precision of a chef who had access to all the region spices. Venison rubbed shoulders with wild boar and bison. Sugar was available in 20 types of salt, and the bread and cakes were textured and the beer was made with malt. The tower was a dream of enologists and sages, a quarter mile of vintages that stretched throughout the ages.
Behind the castle, servants ran about the courtyard. There were stables for the horses and a team of armed guards.
And a little fleet of carriages to take them into town so the fisherman's wife could show off her many gowns.
To the south of a quadrangle, a garden and a park, with lanterns for some evening entertainment after dark.
Here they had a kiwi tree, there a kumquat. Tulips grow in this garden, roses glow in this block.
Every color, every fragrance was within their reach, and the park stretched a full mile right down to the
It was
beach.
filled with game to hunt for sport, stags, deers, hares, and the hunters sallied forth, setting up their snares to catch their master's dinners, catch them unawares.
Well,
Said wife in?
isn't this better?
Yes,
Said the fisherman.
he got it to the letter. Now we can sit back and relax. Let's have a nice quiet evening and be sure to give thanks. We can keep this castle and forever live in peace.
We'll see.
Said the wife.
In the morning after sleep.
This house is all we need, and our lives will be great.
And wifey said yes, but her eyes said, just wait. The wife woke up first early the next morning. She gazed at the beautiful countryside surrounding the castle, and it struck her that this life was kind of boring if she couldn't have authority over everyone in town. And why was her heart blessed with imagination? And why was she gifted with the right of divination? And why should this woman be allowed the situation of the slanderous charge without the threat recrimination? At any rate, she couldn't check voracious ambition, which is how she came upon this next decision. She gave her man a rude awakening. She poked him with her elbow, and then she started shaking him.
Go back to the Flounder Prince. Do it first thing. Tell him that we want to be king.
Wife, 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 wife. Why would we want to be king? I don't want to be king.
Well, maybe you don't want to be king, but I want to be king.
Why would you want to be king?
Just go tell him that I want to be king.
I can't tell him that you want to be the king.
Just go. I have to be the king.
Well, crap, thought the fisherman. Here we go. This really isn't right, and that much I know.
There are times for all we humans when we streak across the sky as a meteor and shine for any paths that cross our eye, when the very situation is inviting imitation and every waking moment is developed in relation.
Then the moments when we are the meteorite. A cold slab of rocky iron, dead where once was light and life.
Grimm says the monkey sees that there's no turning back from the thing that was forbidden by the monkey on his back.
So the fisherman walked down to the sea. The sky was wide open and the sun was blazing all its rays mercilessly. Just to move a muscle was an effort in this heat. And the fisherman could barely be a motor to his feet. But he trudged and he trudged and he trudged and he trudged. The birds had fallen tired, too uncomfortable to chime. But he trudged and he trudged and they judged and they judged. And finally he came to the old seaside.
The ocean, by the way, was a dark gray black. How garish it appeared in the harsh and braying light. The chop was much fiercer with a foul stench back. It was churning from below, turning day back into night.
The fisherman called to his gracious benefactor and prayed with all his might that he might just survive. And gathering his thoughts and considering every factor, called out to the flounder he had helped to stay alive.
Fish prince living in the sea, rise up from the depths and swim to me. My wife had a wish, she has another one still. She sent me here against my will. The ornaments elegance and courtesy that were the hallmark of the fish
He was a flounder, but bred to be a shark.
were in his voice, but maybe a little tenser than before.
What does she want now?
Was this terse rapport?
My goodness.
Said the fisherman.
She wants to be king.
Go home.
The prince said.
She already is.
Good God, what a spectacle of human endeavor. It was never more clear why some tribes every year will invent a new king. No one rules forever, and the peasants would sing a multitudinous reign.
Because our species has a tendency to worship. The hero consult constantly invents itself. It's mirrored in our friendships.
Hierarchies are born into the man and woman. Go to any distant island and you'll feel the feudal learning.
What puzzles me is less why, but how the king is found. Is it class, or genetics, or the face that makes the world go round?
One step back, is it the lineage quotient? The keep it in the family approaching some devotion? Or the sea that starts to shrink until it's just a tide pool? Or is a king chosen by ability to rule?
Could be anything, right? Like a covered dish. In this case, appointment by a fish.
When he looked, his heart leapt, but he didn't make a sound. It was Eden recovered. It was paradise found.
You could feel the castle's presence long before he turned around. It cast a long and lofty shadow on the neighboring town.
He pondered this behemoth dwelling magically appeared, and he rubbed his aching head and he scratched his aching beard.
A palace really would be more descriptive of the splendor. Yes, a giant freaking palace stretching miles from end to end.
Even more impressive was the formidable height. 60 towers, 60 turrets reaching to the sky.
And the gold-encrusted trimming blazed brilliant in the light, and the alabaster statue perched on all the highest heights.
And the entire edifice was made of fine imported marble from the deepest, richest quarries, from the deepest, richest regions of the darkest continents, collected in the darkest seasons. Marble mined to build this palace. Its existence was its reason.
The gates he had to start throwing shoulders, and he wondered if the heart he feared was ice or still smolder.
He threaded through the throngs of generals and men of war, and the soldier units numbered hundreds right outside his door.
A military band was blowing tuckets at arrivals. The trumpets made it platinum, and the sound they made was holy. And another row of sackbuts made intimidating rivals, and big serpents and some octocleats, and many drums a rolling.
Snare drums,
Bass drums,
Tam-tam,
tail drums,
cymbals,
tambourine, gongs,
side drum,
field drum.
people building logs.
40,000 crickets and an army of frogs.
How can I describe what he found inside? Behind the doors, which were made of solid gold, miles of rooms, yes, one for every bride ever married in the fairy tales of old.
The kitchen had an indoor lake about a mile across, where the fishermen could daily give their fishing poles a toss.
Every meal was feeding all the royalty and dignitary fixtures, plus associates and traveling well-wishers, and of course the distantly related dukes and duchesses and barons, plus a host of princes who had wife and throne ambitions.
And these banqueters assembled daily up and down the hall, with the bread and meats all heaped before them, and serving all, the steward drawing wine from the mixing bowl makes his rounds, and all sit still, enthralled to hear the bard.
Everywhere courtiers were bustling about, saying,
Reprimand for Oxford!
Take this letter to the count!
Dukes were talking quietly with somewhat shifty eyes. The maids were blushing pleasantly and feigning their surprise.
Where was his wife, though he peered up to the sky? She was sitting on a throne a good 2 miles high. On her head a crown, too large to carry grace, to wear it she had bolstered her neck with a brace. Was there something radiant or papal in her face, the noble bearing of a wife who knew disgrace?
Naturally, her throne was studded through and through with jewels, yes, emeralds and rubies and blood diamonds too.
One hand held the golden scepter, the other one held the imperial orb. Bodyguards were lined up, ready to protect her, each a little shorter than the one in line before.
The closest to the throne was a giant like a wall. He was 20 meters wide and at least a mile tall.
The last in line was the tiniest dwarf, smaller than my fingernail, but strong as a horse.
Well, wife, it looks like you're king.
Yes, now listen how the people sing. Listen how my praises reverberate and ring. Let them tremble lest they feel my terrible sting.
Well, this is just about as high as any man can rise.
He was looking in vain for contentment in her eyes.
Surely we can stop now?
Wife said,
Nope. Tell the fish I want to be Pope.
Pope? Did she say she wants to be Pope?
I'm not sure she can be Pope.
Isn't there just one Pope?
yeah, I'm pretty sure there's just one pope.
So wouldn't she dethrone that pope? Who is she that has to be pope? So the fisherman walked down to the sea. A demonic gale was raging and the birds were all dead. Shivering and shaking and quaking at the knees, the fisherman was terrified, but still he went ahead.
Whatever stirs the thunderheads and massive storm clouds was maybe walking on the line of what's allowed.
Cirrus clouds were positively racing in the sky, standing out against the black but glowing blood red. The sea was boiling angrily with waves a mile high, and the stench was truly pestilent, the perfume of the dead.
Far off in the distance he could see little ships, but they were all capsizing. Wind had shredded the sails to bits.
He knew that men were drowning, and was it on his shoulder, and every peasant's heavy load of poverty and care?
The weight of guilt was crippling, like Sisyphus's boulder. He had to brush it off, and he called out in despair.
Fish prince, living in the sea, rise up from the depths and swim to me. My wife found a wish, she has another one still. She sent me here against my will. Flounder came, asked what she wanted. The fisherman felt like a fox being hunted, like Conrad's Marlowe at the end of the rope, sheepishly.
She wants to be the Pope.
Well, what is our flounder if he isn't a prince?
Go home,
He said.
she already is.
The fisherman gave quiet thanks, the way we all do, when we escape some new emergency and life begins anew. And the sun was once more shining, also chiding, mostly shining. The sea had combed itself, and the scent was green and briny.
And what did he find at home? A monumental church that stretched to heaven's door.
So polished and so bright that he thought he might go blind, from the gold that made the roof down to the gold that made the floor.
This church was a miracle of architecture. I could tell you all about it, but it's a wearisome lecture.
Around it maybe 20-30 palaces built to protect the holy creature from the riffraff and savages.
Every massive creature in the garrison ring was a replica of just the one they had when she was king.
And bayonets like fences all along every facade, and heavy iron cannons out from every aperture and brick, and the road that snaked between them all was cobblestone and broad, and the throng of pilgrims visiting superlatively thick.
The church,
The cathedral.
couldn't have been more ornate. The man that bent the malleable propensity to decorate.
Not only constructed to be glorious for years and presumably to offer hope direct to pilgrim ears, but amazing to the eye. The immense slabs of gold had scenes from both testaments, Gospels and the Old.
Here was David with his harp, soothing the assassin. There was Jonathan the gullet of the Leviathan, the inspiration on a Mount of Olives, the future revelation, all its splendor and squalor.
Glorious music was playing, a fugue with an inexhaustible supply of voices ever entering, infinitely piled on, infinitely beautiful. The fugue had been developing for centuries.
And the candles!
Candles!
The entire space blazed with the candles. The fisherman was dazed and amazed.
The flames were metaphors for the length of human life and the divine redemption offered by the fisherman's wife.
The smallest, like an atom, flickered in and out noiselessly, twinkling like stars, sending light for years glorious.
The largest were as tall and thick as towers, and the fire roaring on a wick a meter thick and melting wax in showers.
The wife's throne now was 10 miles high. The crown she wore was 300 meters tall. Her gown was so heavy with jewels and diamonds, she sat immobile, but visible to all.
Well now, wife, now you're Pope.
Yes, my husband, now I am Pope.
Kings and princes, daily kiss your slipper and repent. Thousands labored building you this church. Their lives are spent. Maybe now she'll be less power bent. Now that she has all the power, surely she'll relent.
Night settled down, but the wife couldn't sleep. She tossed and turned. The fire in her burned. The thought of giving up made her royal eyes weep. She still didn't have enough. She still hadn't learned. When morning finally broke and the sun began to rise, a dawning comprehension settled on her greedy eyes. Hope was mighty good, but it was never too soon to ask the prince if she could control the sun and moon.
Imagine it.
She thought,
I could have supreme power. I could shorten every day to the length of an hour. My hand would steal the very joy and miseries of life.
So ran the thoughts of the fisherman's
wife. She shook her husband once again until he was released from the only peace it had in weeks, the peace that comes from sleep.
Listen to me, husband. Being Pope is great, but these nights are too long, and I don't like to wait. It tortures me that Helicon and Luna are so wise. I should be the one who tells them when to set and rise. The Pope's power is narrow. I need something more broad. Tell the fish I want to be God!
The fisherman just stared. Finally, he murmured,
Wife, I will not go and talk to the prince about that. Blasphemy, and shame on you for asking me.
The face of the wife took on a sinister expression. Her eyes were glowing red and her hair stood up on end. She tore her royal garments and took out her heavy scepter. The violence of poverty, I guess it never left her. Swinging it blindly as though it were a mace, it came uncomfortably close to the fisherman's face. Seeing he was done for if he came or he went, he headed out the door where he was sent.
So the fisherman walked down to the sea. The wind was destroying everything. It was pulling up the trees. It was knocking over domiciles with bone-chilling ease like a dandelion spraying in the breeze.
Mountains in the distance crumbled. An entire range of mountain peaks crumbled like the earth itself was humbled. All the stars were falling from the sky onto the ground. Giant smoking craters where they landed could be found.
The thunder was deafening, the lightning was bright. The sea was never angrier, a terrifying sight. Tidal waves were coming, you could see them miles away, the consequence of shifting tectonic plates. The fisherman stood at the edge of the swell so loud he could barely hear himself yell. Fish prince living in the sea, rise up from the depths and swim to me. My wife, I don't wish she has another one still. She sent me here against my will. Stood and waited. Sure enough it came. The flounder prince was angry. Could he really be blamed?
Well, what does she want?
He spat the words like bile.
Your wife was only pope for a very short while.
Oh my,
Said the fisherman and cast his gaze abroad.
she tells me that she wants to be God.
Go home.
Said the flounder prince.
You want to know why?
She's back at home in the pigsty.